Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing reading comprehension. Now, the important thing to understand when we're looking at how to comprehend literature is first understanding how authors are communicating themselves. And that really depends on the genre in which they're writing. For example, if an author is choosing to write in the genre of fiction, then they are going to be using very specific, what we call elements of fiction, in order to communicate their ideas. What we learn when we read fiction is that authors are interweaving together characterization, or their characters, details about their characters, plot development, or the events of the story, where these characters find themselves, the setting, conflicts. This can include both internal and external, along with their subsequent resolutions. And this is how authors of fiction communicate themselves. It's through these elements that we can begin to understand how to annotate or take notes, so that we understand on a surface level the main ideas that are being communicated by the author. Now, this will be level 1 of reading comprehension, understanding main ideas. This is what's most important to do well on end of course exams, along with our diagnostic exams. This is what's going to be tested on our standardized exams. This is surface level observation. Apart from our AP exams, such as AP Literature or AP Language, we're really just looking at understanding main ideas. Now, this can become more complex as the literature becomes more complex. And it does. As we move through our grade levels, the literature will become more and more complex as we're looking at historical documents and speeches in our nonfiction, and we're looking at classical novels, short stories, and novellas in our fiction. So this is really what we focus on first to make sure that we understand reading comprehension is level 1. Can we understand what the author is communicating, what their main ideas are? Now, to put that into context, nonfiction, being completely different than fiction, which, by the way, is a creative work of the imagination, is informational text. What this means is that you're going to be bombarded with information, and you'll need a system to categorize that information. What we do is we draw out the main ideas and leave behind the supporting details, because what we find in nonfiction is that authors are interweaving together their main ideas with supporting details. This is what should guide our annotations or our note-taking process. Here we can use a strategy, what we call the 5 W's plus H, to go and find the answers that authors have already naturally embedded into their writing. A good writer does not leave any stone unturned. They are not going to leave their readers scratching their head wondering what the answer to a question is. So we, like detectives or sleuths, go into the story to find the answers to these questions. Now, what we focus on more than anything will be the who, or the subject, and we do this paragraph by paragraph. We find out what the subject of the paragraph is, and then we find out what's happening to that subject, and then answer why or how that thing is happening to that subject. From time to time, we do need to answer a when or a where in order to understand the main idea. This is not always necessary. Also, from time to time, we embed the answer to a when or a where into the answer that we've given for a who, a what, a why, or a how, as there is overlap. So this really is what we're using to guide our annotations. When we sit down and read Lord of the Flies, for example, we are going to make a chart where we are looking at characterization, plot development, setting, conflict resolution, how these are interweaving together to express what the author is communicating. Or in terms of fiction, themes that they're building, the motifs to build up those themes. This is how we find them on a surface level. Now, to put that into further context, let's take an example novel. This is the first Sherlock Holmes novel by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, A Study in Scarlet. In order to understand just one element of fiction on a surface level observation, main idea level, level 1, we would just simply write the beginning, the middle, and the end of the novel. Now let's take a look at step 2. Step 2 is analysis. Here I've brought in a definition of analysis. Analysis is a detailed examination of the elements or structure of something. Here we are looking at going beyond the surface. We are no longer at a surface level observation. We are now examining a little deeper into the nature of whatever subject or structure that we're looking at. Here in this case, we're looking at plot development in A Study in Scarlet. On an analytical level, we notice that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle utilizes a very specific rhetorical device called Analepsis, which just means an extended flashback. What this means is that the story begins in the middle and works its way backwards. This is true also of his second novel. And we can go further than that with our analysis. We also can be looking at how there is a very strong historical explanation within his fiction, and that he's British and he's writing on American history, and it's all very interesting. Now that last statement I just made will lead us into our third level of thinking, critical analysis. This is what we want to strive for. This is the most difficult. This is what college professors want you to be able to do by the time you get to college. Also in high school, this is a great thing to be shooting for. Once we really have a good handle on reading for main ideas and analysis, then we can move on to critical analysis. Let's take a look at our definition for critical thinking. Critical thinking is the objective analysis. Notice we're adding analysis just as a part of this definition. Analysis will only be one part of giving critical analysis or critical thinking. Here we are looking at the objective because it's not subjective or open to bias. The objective analysis and evaluation of an issue, or in this case, fiction, a text, in order to form a judgment. This will be your subjective, educated opinion. So for example, let's go back to our study in Scarlet. We may perhaps want to give a judgment on analepsis and decide for ourselves, did that work? Was that a good option, a good choice for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? If so, let's explain exactly why and support that with evidence from the text. Let's bring in some quotations and tie that into a logical flow of argumentation to support that opinion. Maybe we don't think it was the best idea. Now we need to give alternatives. What would have been better and why? This is the realm of critical thinking. This is critical analysis. Here we can utilize our strategies to help us annotate. That is the most important thing that we accomplish as we are working through understanding first main ideas on a surface level, and moving our way into analysis and eventually into critical analysis. It all begins with how we are annotating. If we are reading fiction, we want to annotate for our 5 elements of fiction. You can remember that with the acronym CPR, characterization, plot development, resolution, not forgetting setting and conflict in there. Or if we're reading nonfiction material, we can annotate for these questions that the authors have already embedded into their writing, because good writers do not leave any questions to be asked. They do not leave any stone unturned, so to speak. And this is really what we're looking at as we move through our reading comprehension passages.